Good evening. Thank you for calling C4 C4 Operations. You didn't call. Thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. Tonight we're going to talk about how far back to go in a background check. So it's called scope. We have a 7-year scope, a 10-year scope, and then a lifetime scope. Tonight we're going to focus on the lifetime scope. We've talked a lot about 7 years, and that's the standard in the industry and things like that. But tonight we're going to talk about the lifetime. Basically, why? Why would you do a lifetime? Why would you have to do a lifetime? So we're going to talk about that. Is there certain states or certain regions or whatever where you have to do certain things? Yes. Is there certain regions that you can't do certain things? Yes. So those are the three things that we're going to cover tonight as far as the scope of a background check and how far back you go. So first of all, let's talk about that. 7 years, as we've talked about before, is kind of the standard in the industry. That's what most background checks are. You go back 7 years, unless you're just going to cover your current county. But even for that current county, that would cover 7 years inside of that county. Or you can do what we call an address review and go back 7 years of all the counties that that person's lived in. Now, sometimes you might want to go back further. Some companies want to go back 10 years. Some companies want to go back lifetime. Why would you want to go back lifetime? Well, one of the reasons is because, let's talk about the 7-year. We have some clients who have gotten 7-year background check, but then have found out that their applicant had other things, maybe 10 years, 12 years, whatever, that were on their record, but they didn't find out about them because the search that they requested stopped at 7 years. So they're thinking, hey, wait a minute, we want to know about those things. So we said, okay, we can go back to 10 years or 12 years or even lifetime. So they've chosen to go lifetime and then evaluate that situation. So is that a wise thing to do? Is that a good thing to do? Yes, definitely a wise thing to do because you're going to get all of that information. You're going to see that information. A couple things you need to be careful of. Number one, you need to make sure that the region you are in or the state you are in will allow that. That's very important to consider because if you are thinking of going to lifetime, you have to know that there are several states that are called 7-year states, and you can only go back 7 years in that particular state. We're not going to go through all those tonight, but if you're wondering if you are a 7-year state, you probably know that if you're in HR or doing background checks or anything. But if you don't know that and you're wondering, definitely give us a call and let us know. We'll give you a heads up. California, for example. California is definitely a 7-year state. You cannot do a lifetime search in California. There's a couple of exceptions. If the position has to do with working around children and or the elderly, and you find a crime further back than 7 years, you might be able to use that crime as a reason to not hire that person. But again, those are few and far between and very specialized things, not the norm, not the typical rule or regulation to follow. Typically, you want to think of California as a 7-year state, and you don't want to go any further back than 7 years in California. So that's one thing to consider. Should I do a lifetime search? Well, what state are you in? What region are you in? Let's talk about that. As always, you can give us a call and we can answer those things for you and talk about that. Now, if you do choose to do a 7-year or a lifetime search, and you are in a state that allows you to do that, okay, what are the advantages of that? Why would you do that? We talked about that before with the client that only got 7 years of information. Well, maybe they have a violent crime or something other that maybe it matters to you in your industry on certain crimes like theft. If you're sending people into people's homes and they had a theft 12 years ago, well, we have a few clients that have gotten in that situation where they only did a 7-year search. These people had crimes back 10 years, 12 years, whatever, and they didn't know those things. And so now they know those things because they do a longer scope. Some do 10 years, some do lifetime, etc. So they are able to go back a little further in that criminal history and find those things. Can they do all that? You bet you can, as long as you're, like I say, in the right state. Does it cost more? Here's a few things to consider about cost. Typically, the overall package will cost more up front because there's obviously more work to do in the searches. The other thing to consider is many of our researchers across the nation, not just ours, but court researchers across the nation will charge after 7 years or 10 years, they'll charge a certain fee. Some of them charge $1 per year after 10 years, for example. That's kind of common. Others will charge a flat $25 fee for a lifetime search in a certain state. Or maybe they'll charge a certain, like $35 in a certain state or county for that certain jurisdiction. So there's different pricing structures there to consider as well, okay? So it probably will take a little longer to do a lifetime search, and it probably will cost a little more, not always, but depending on the jurisdiction you're talking about, it can cost a little bit more to do those. So that's another factor to consider when you're talking about lifetime searches. Last thing to consider is your region. Do you have to do a lifetime search, or can you do a lifetime search? We already talked about the 7-year rule in certain states. But let's take Indiana home health care, for example, okay? In Indiana, in the state of Indiana, Indiana home health care, if you're an Indiana home health care business, you know that you have to do a lifetime search. That started July 2016. The legislature said there that any home health care worker has to do a lifetime search. No more 7-year, no more 10-year. They have to go back lifetime. So depending on what industry you're in, maybe you have certain state regulations that mandate certain things like this. We have certain company regulations that mandate this. There are other industries that can mandate a lifetime search. So again, make sure that you know whatever industry you're in and the state or region you're in, what your requirements are, and we can definitely help you figure those out as well. So again, give us a call. Answer our phones 24/7. We would love to talk to you about this and help you out. If you have any questions, let us know. Other than that, have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.